Van McMahon, baddest dude in all the land. Texas blood as thick as mud, he's Van McMahon. Van McMahon, he's Van McMahon.
Yes! Brady, good job. We promised our guy, Tim McMahon, we'd get the Van McMahon song in all of its glory rolling. So glad we were able to do that for our guy, Tim McMahon. Joins the program as he does every Tuesday at this time. Tim, what's up, man? What do you think?
Beautiful acapella,
Not bad, right?
Yeah, not some of his better work this season. I'll give Tom that.
I mean, look, how many shows do you go on across the country that listen to your demands and acquiesce and make sure that we get exactly what you asked us to get, Tim?
Now, be careful what you ask, because they have it with the actual guitar and everything to lead me in Dallas and Oklahoma City.
Oh man, now I feel like we're failures after being proud.
But where you guys went above and beyond was you made Pedro Strode do it a cappella on your air. So I will say you are the only ones who've been able to pull that off.
Okay. We will take it because we do like to congratulate ourselves an awful lot on the show. All right, Tim, a lot to get to. And obviously the Jazz are playing really well. And, of course, they are playing teams that aren't very good at basketball. But here's what I like about what they're doing, Tim. Good teams beat the teams they're supposed to beat without making excuses. And the Jazz are doing that. They're going to play Brooklyn in about an hour and a half, and they have a chance to win 10 straight games. It's hard to do in this league.
Yeah, 10 straight. And what is it? Would it be 14 or 15?
14 or 15, yep. Mm-hmm.
And look, you have to, if you are going to be a team that's going to compete for one of the top seeds in your conference, you have to feast when you have a soft stretch schedule. And they've absolutely done that. And, they're not squeaking by. I think during this 14-game stretch, Gobert leads the league in plus minus, and it's plus 191. And then I believe the next three guys, if I'm not mistaken, on that list are all Jazz players. And so, they are winning these games convincingly. They're playing really good basketball, although the Jazz are one of the best clutch teams in the NBA as well when you look at those statistics. And look, they'll have obviously tougher tests that will come their way. But to be doing this when they don't have their starting point guard, I don't think there's any need to but and this and that.
You mentioned the clutch and the Jazz winning close games, and this was your tweet just a couple of days ago. And follow Tim on Twitter if you're a Jazz fan or an NBA fan or both. He's just a must-follow at ESPN_McMahon. Rudy Gobert leads the NBA in the following clutch categories: plus-minus, field goal percentage, rebounds, and block shots. So the reason I bring that up, Tim, is do you think, and we were talking to Isola about this yesterday, do you think the league really understands how unique and good Rudy is? And the reason I ask this is it seems like every night, teams and players just insist on driving at him in what I would say very irresponsible ways because he's going to block your shot or he's going to change it. Like, why does it feel like teams don't game plan for Rudy just yet? Maybe I'm off base.
I do also feel, though, that he leads the league in what I call second decisions. Second decisions created, or second thoughts created. And what I mean by that is guys will drive in and they'll see Rudy and be like, let's dribble this thing back out, or let's kick it out. And so I think there is the respect for him as a defensive force, but I can't sit here and tell you that the league gives Rudy the proper respect for the simple fact that at least last season, or I should say especially last season, the coaches didn't vote him to be an all-star reserve. And to me, that was absolutely shocking. Obviously, preaching to the choir there in Salt Lake City. But, I don't know. I don't know why. I don't know if it's because despite all the talk about defense and winning and that, ultimately people look at scoring first, second, third, and fourth. I don't really fully understand it.
Sticking with the All-Star thing for a second, Tim, Jazz fans have gone from, hey, we deserve 8 dudes in the game to we deserve no dudes in the game. And now I think they're hoping that at least somebody makes it. I think both Donovan and Rudy should, though. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, if they keep winning going into the time, the end of the month when it's time for the reserves to be chosen, then I definitely think that those two guys are absolutely deserving. And with Rudy, look, if Karl Anthony Towns gets in above Rudy this year when he's missed so much time, I just would not be able to understand that. If the Jazz are sitting in one of the top 3 or 4 spots in the West and they don't get at least one, then I understand all the sensitivity that would be coming out of Salt Lake City. But like I said, I think both guys are deserving. To me, I would give the edge to Rudy just because I truly believe he is the one who impacts winning more on a night-in, night-out basis.
How surprised have you been at the play of Emmanuel Mudiay? Because I do think it's time to stand up and give him some credit. And he's never really been coached the way Quinn coaches. He's never been developed the way the Jazz develop players. He's still young, big body, athletic kid. He didn't play well in Denver, didn't play well in New York, but in this role, Tim, he's been pretty good.
Yeah, and in New York, he at least put up some numbers, and that didn't. To your point, it doesn't necessarily mean he played well, but he at least you knew when he signed with the Jazz that he was an NBA caliber athlete. You knew there was some upside there, and so and he chose to go to Utah when it's not like there was a huge market for him, but he had certainly other options at the minimum because he believed that this coaching staff could really help him get his career going. I think you do have to kind of give at least some benefit of the doubt when there's a situation like that Quinn Snyder and his staff will find a way to get a talented player to be productive. Now, look, it's not they don't bat 1,000. You can certainly throw Dante Exum out there as an example where that didn't happen, and we'll see how things go for him in Cleveland. But with a guy like Mudiay, I think he has responded to good coaching, and I also think that he'd kind of been humbled enough as a pretty high lottery pick who bounced around a little bit to realize this was an opportunity that if he didn't get it right here, the next stop might be China.
Tim McMahon is with us from ESPN, NBA Daily Assist 2.0. Tim, if the playoffs started today, and you are more uniquely qualified to answer this than anybody, and obviously things will change. It's kind of fun fodder today. If the playoffs started today, it would be Jazz-Mavs. How would you see that series going?
It'd be great for me. 2 of my teams
that
I know very well, and I get to sleep in my own bed for half the time, which has been rare for me in the playoffs. You know what? That is an interesting one because, correct me if I'm wrong, they have not played this season.
That is correct.
And so I don't have a great feel for that. I've got better feels for, and it's not like regular season stuff is necessarily a guarantee for what you're going to see in the playoffs. But man, that's a really good question. I want to see how does Quinn and the players, how do they attack defending Luka Doncic? Man, that would be a really interesting series. I would say the Mavericks would have a pretty significant advantage in terms of depth, but I think that depth becomes less important once the playoffs roll around. Obviously, there's no back-to-backs, longer time between games, always going to be national TV timeouts, starters' minutes get extended. I would probably give the edge to the Jazz simply because they've tasted the playoffs before, where this will be the first go-round for the vast majority of the Mavericks. But again, I'm looking forward, and I'll be in Utah later this month when the Mavs come through. I'm looking forward to kind of seeing how those teams actually match up on the floor.
Curious to get your thoughts on what you've seen from Ja Morant. I mean, Memphis isn't on national television very much, and unless you're really dialed into watching Grizzly hoops, you're probably not necessarily paying attention. Most people thought Zion was going to win Rookie of the Year. His injury happens, and we've seen Ja a couple of different times as the Jazz have matched up with them. He's really good, Tim. What impresses you the most about his rookie season so far?
Well, I'm also pretty uniquely qualified for this one, considering I'm standing outside of FedEx Forum and have been here in Memphis the last few days working on a Ja Morant story.
Nice.
Look, the kid is really, really talented. I mean, like, I don't have to tell you how athletic he is. If you have a Twitter account, you know that. The highlights are ridiculous. But I think the difference between him and, like, a young Derrick Rose or a young Westbrook, those guys were, you know, they were built like strong safeties. This guy's built more like a slot receiver. But those are spectacular athletes who played point guard. John Morant's a spectacular athlete who is a point guard. He thinks like a point guard. He sees the floor like a point guard. He interacts with teammates like a point guard. He's a very coachable, curious kid, but came in the league supremely confident. And he's got a chip on his shoulder. And I think it actually ended up benefiting him that he's not one of these kids who knew from the age of 14, 15, 16 that he was going to be a lottery pick. He wasn't some AAU darling who'd been getting his butt kissed since he was 12 years old. He was an overlooked guy, ended up going to Murray State, really blew up, but he's got that chip on his shoulder, and he's determined to kind of prove himself every single night. And I tell you, for a baby-faced kid, like, it looks like if you put a little spit on your thumb and rub the top, his upper lip, like that mustache will come right off. This kid is he's got a killer mentality. He's fearless. He loves being challenged, whether it's, in terms of responsibilities, rising to the moment, competing against, guys who he grew up watching. Like, he's a baby-faced killer without question.
Is Oklahoma City good? I mean, I absolutely thought they were going to trade CP3 and just completely rebuild this year. Are they actually good?
Yeah, they're solid. People talk about, well, there's 6 teams in the West and then drops off. No, there's 7. The Thunder are legit. And we'll see what happens before the trade deadline. I mean, if the right offer comes along, maybe they do trade Gallinari. I tend to think that if they deal him, it'll be a sign and trade this summer when, he might even have more value on a longer-term deal. But, no, they're good. I mean, Shai Gilgeous-Alexander is a player. He's a young kid who's got superstar potential and is playing at close to an all-star level. And, Chris Paul, I mean, look, the guy, like him or not, he can hoop. He can straight up hoop. And I think he got in a little bit better shape. He changed his diet this summer, so, he's not quite as puffy. He's a little bit quicker, but he's back playing in a system where first year in the Rockets, that ISO-intensive system worked for him because he was beating guys off the dribble. Last year, he lost a little step. Now he's playing where, it's more about scheme than just one-on-one. He's back in an offensive system. He's back running the show. And he is a guy who he has been absolutely dominant in crunch time. Leads the league in clutch scoring. In a close game, I mean, that Chris Paul coming off a pick and roll mid-range jumper, you've seen it. You've seen it in the playoffs. I mean, that thing is absolutely money.
You mentioned the trade deadline, Tim, and we'll end on this. It's officially 1 month away, a little less than that now, but about a month away. And every year it's just kind of fun to talk about possibilities. And it seems like every year, 99% of the possibilities we talk about on air never come close to happening. But what do you anticipate come about a month from now? Do you think we'll see some movement, or do you anticipate something pretty quiet?
There's always going to be some movement, but it's certainly complicated by the fact that right now there's 7 pretty much lock-them-in playoff teams in the West. And then there's 7 teams that are fighting for the 8 seed. I mean, the Grizzlies are sitting in the 8 seed right now. Who saw that coming? And so there's only one team at this point that doesn't have a chance to be a playoff team in the Western Conference. And by the way, that's the franchise that went to the finals the last 5 years as far as things that you would have predicted. So I think the fact that so many of these teams in the West have legitimate chances to make the playoffs, and for a lot of those franchises, like, that would be significant, whether it's Sacramento, which hadn't been there in forever, or even a franchise like a New Orleans or like a Memphis, where, boy, even if it's just one round, that experience for their young players could be really valuable. I think that could really kind of gum up the trade market. For example, Drew Holiday was one of the top names that was expected to be available. Well, if they get Zion back and they're playing well, maybe they decide, let's make a run at this playoff spot, and a guy like Holiday doesn't get moved. So, there's always moves made, but I don't know if it's going to be as busy as it's been, some of these recent years.
Good stuff, Tim, as always. Enjoy the time in Memphis. Safe travels. Have a great week ahead, man. We'll chat next week. All right, be well.
Okay, sounds good. Appreciate it.